We'll go ahead and get started. I want to start by just introducing the guys that are on here, and thank you to those that are coming on here to listen. There's a lot of great educational Zoom calls that are out there right now, and hopefully this one is something that you take something from as well too. And I want to say a quick thank you to Conor, Burke, Jeremy Pena, Mike Gaffney, and Jimmy Goelz for taking the time out of their night tonight to talk a little baseball and talk a little bit of infield play. So if you would, just introduce yourself real quick, just basically where you're from and a little bit about yourself real quick. Jim, you want to start us?
Sure. Name is Jimmy Goelz. I'm an assistant coach over at New York Tech. Played 9 years of pro ball and mostly a shortstop. I played all over the infield, so that's it.
Gaff?
Yeah, Mike Gaffney. I'm the associate head coach at Long Island University. I was formerly the head coach at LIU Post. I played my college baseball at New York Tech and then went on and played 5 years in the Kansas City Royals organization like Jimmy. I started off as a shortstop, and as your career goes on, you realize that you got to start learning other positions. So I played all around the infield.
Great. Thank you, Gaff. Berkey?
Conor, Burke, assistant baseball coach at Dartmouth College. Was at the University of Maine for the previous 4 years. I played college baseball at a couple of colleges, but graduated from Queens. Wasn't too good of an infielder, so they eventually kicked me to the outfield, but did start college as an infielder.
And Jeremy? Thank you, Conor.
My name is Jeremy Pena. I'm a minor leaguer with the Houston Astros. I went to the University of Maine for 3 years. I've played infield my whole life. I've had great coaches, and I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Now, you don't have to lie here on the podcast, but thank you. I want to go ahead and get started. My name is Matt Marsh. That's all you really got to know going forward. Don't need to get into background, but I don't want to bore you with anything. I want to talk some infield, and that's what we're here to do. So I want to basically how it's going to work is I'm going to just ask each of you guys a question. You guys kind of go on it, answer it however you'd like, and then we'll kind of diverge more into conversation as we go. Jim, I'm going to ask you to start us. Just give me a couple things that you believe in infield wise. What are some of your infield philosophies that you have, or things that you try and get across to your players when you're working with them?
I think the most important thing for me for an infielder that I learned was to get a proper hop. So, we're looking to get a big hop or a short hop. And everything that goes into that, we're going to talk about here, I'm sure throughout the other questions. But if you have some really good feet and you can go and understand what the ball is going to do, and, I think most of that comes from a ton of reps. And I think everybody in here listening, and the young kids especially, the more you see a ball, the more your brain starts to decide or subconsciously know where the ball is going to be, at what height, and, you read it off the bat, the kind of contact. So, just to me, getting a really good hop with your feet is probably the most important thing, because you can defend every single ball that way.
Gaff, what do you got on that?
Well, Jimmy and I come from the same school, so my main thing is also getting the right hop, and to go a little further into that is just I want to make sure all my infielders are athletes. They're not robots. You see a lot of infielders nowadays, and sometimes in certain programs that you play, they're all fielding the ground ball the same way. We want everyone to kind of do their own thing and know who they are and get themselves in the best position. And then once they are getting the right hop, now you got to take care of the ball and get your body into the right position to make a good throw too. So, and it is all about reps. I think there's certain reasons to do drills, but I think the more reps you get, you could add some difficulty and some really good teaching points in the amount of reps. And I think but to go back to your point, I think really just being an athlete and just putting yourself in the best position to make the play.
Awesome. Thank you, Gaff. Berkey, what do you got to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'm more of a student from the same school that Goelz and Gaff are from, since Jimmy taught me most of what I know. And I think to build on the good feet, get good hops, be an athlete, play accurate catch. I think that's one of the biggest things in the world is to play accurate catch. So many throwing errors come from just bad feet and bad momentum. So playing good catch is a big thing. So if you want to be good at it, you just got to practice it and put emphasis on it. So I think whenever we're developing infielders, if it's a quality that's important to you, you got to practice it. And again, there is no substitute for ground balls. You could do all the drills until you're blue in the face, but there is no substitute for a hard hit ground ball. I think Jeremy will be able to attest to that.
Absolutely. And, Jeremy, being in a little bit of a different spot, you're still playing baseball, what are some of the things that, you like to focus on, for you, or what's important for you when you're going to go get your work in?
I mean, when I go get my work in, I try to do the little things right, take care of the ball. I've always been a believer of if you could do it, like, don't mess it up in practice. So like Burke was saying with the playing accurate catch, one of the older players told me at spring training that I didn't really pay much attention to it because we when we're growing up and just playing ball, we just play. We don't pay attention to the little details, and to us, it might go over our head. It's so simple that we might not find it important, but that's what slows the game down. Correa told me this past spring training, one of his focus is to not make a bad throw in practice. And I really took that to heart because we make a nice play in the hole, and then we just get up and throw the ball as hard as we can, make a bad throw. That's it. That's a runner that advances. So we just gave up a run. So one of his focuses is to always make good throws and take care of the ball. Take care of the ball in practice. You take care of the ball in practice, you'll take care of it in the game. So.
Oh, I love it. And, Berkey, like you, Jimmy, I learned a ton from working with you over the years and learned a ton from really each of you, even in conversations, Gaff, with you of, just hanging out at Diamond Nation or whatever it might be, or an event, and just talking to you and talking baseball. So I've learned a lot from each of you guys, and, that's, picking your hop, using your feet, it's starting with catch play, having good transfers and transferring at the center of your body, consistently and trying to get to the same spot, and, just challenging yourself, to make every single throw that you make in your catch play and every rep that you take great. And one thing that I admire with you, Jeremy, that you've been doing too, that even when you take a rep that you don't like, that you get back to center now. And I've noticed that you've made that adjustment where if that ball's hitting the hole and, say it hits off the end of your glove, instead of just picking it up and throwing it, that you're getting back to center. And that's something that, Jimmy, I know you've talked to me about in the past too, that you always feel a lot better when you get back there and just practice that habit. So that's all really good stuff. Overall philosophy for infield, I know that there's a lot of things out there that talk about, making the routine play routinely. And Jim, you and I were talking about this the other day, but we also want to be able to make the great play. Would you care to elaborate on that? Because you were saying that to me on the phone the other day, on something that you say to your guys over there.
Yeah, listen, I think in a way when you play shortstop or the middle infield and even, third base to some extent, you're kind of a performer. I think we take pride in making that great play. And listen, the best athletes play there for a reason because they can do that. And, I tell my guys at the school that we're looking to steal hits and hush the crowd. So, I think I'm sure some of you guys can attest to it, when you're on the road as a defender and you make a great defensive play and the crowd just goes silent because you just ruined their day, I think that's almost better than when someone's cheering for you at the home stadium. But we want to be able to make those plays. And so we practice a lot of plays on the run. We've practiced throwing at all different angles. And we saw it last year, in our season. We won some games because our middle guys made some bang plays in big moments where there was no time to set your feet. And we even saw it this year with all of our infielders making big time, stealing hits all the time. And it wasn't, it was routine to them because we do it all the time and they do it properly. When you are on the run or making these plays and you put yourself in a strong position, like you just said, being athletic, the throw is going to be super accurate all the time. So we just have to do the reps over and over again.
Awesome. Thank you. Jim, and I'm going to start back off with you again, and we'll go back around. But you always talked about, and I don't actually know if I've ever asked you this question. You talk about some things offensively with me in the past that you said was a game changer for you in your career. That's really allowed you to take off as a player or as a coach. What's something for you that you think defensively as a teaching point really changed the game for you?
I think that's actually a really easy one. My first day in pro ball with the Los Angeles Dodgers, we go down there and, you're all a little nervous, and we get the first day on the half infield where, that was my thing, fielding. So this is my opportunity to show their organization like what they got, and I'm going to, just show off here. So I do my ground balls, and I caught every one. I throw in bullets across, and I thought I nailed it, but we had a legendary infield coordinator walks out, Chico Fernandez, and he just goes, "Man, we got a lot of work to do with you." And I was like, "Really?" So, and Gaff can attest to this. Gaff and I were on like the leaderboard at New York Tech. I think they finally took it out of the brochure, where him and I are like the top guys in errors all time at New York Tech. And I think that comes with the territory, and Mike can explain that too. Guys that are trying to get guys out, trying to make the big play, you're going to force some things. And, it's part of growing up as a shortstop. But that guy, Chico Fernandez, told me about playing low and getting down. He had me throwing from my knees. And when I got low, and it's something I was never really taught, just starting low and staying low throughout everything, I started seeing hops. I was on the same level as the hops. I was working below the hop. All of a sudden, instead of making those 20 errors a year, you go down to 9, 10, and you're more sure-handed, which when you get to the pro game, you need to be sure-handed. So staying low and even turning the other plays, getting low as I receive the throw. To this day, if I'm struggling, all I do is I bend my knees and get down. My arm gets better because I'm in my legs, and I see everything developing on the ground with the ball. So that staying low was a game changer for me, where I became a kid with talent to being, a guy that helps the team on the routine and with the flair.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I think it's important for everyone to understand too, that, because you're making more errors, a lot of times it's because you're getting to more balls. Those two kind of work hand in hand with somebody that's a good defender, that, just because your fielding percentage isn't, 980 or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that, you're not taking away hits, that you're not making the great play as well too. Gaff, what do you got to weigh in? What's one thing that's been a game changer for you, either as a coach or as a player?
Well, as a player, I remember early on, I would get to a lot of balls, and sometimes I want to field them cleanly. So early on, and when I say early, I mean high school and maybe in college, just keep my feet moving all the time. If you plant your feet and then wait for the ball to get to you, that ball's going to play you. You're going to get a bad hop. So just keeping your feet, approaching the ball, walking into the ball, right, left, catch, that type of stuff. But then once I got to pro ball, I think one of the things that amazed me was, like Jimmy said, we made a lot of errors in college, and a lot of it was, getting the balls that maybe not most will get to, and then trying to make the spectacular play and making an error there. But I had a lot of throwing errors. So I caught everything. I just, for some reason, that the ball be running into the line, and I didn't know why. And it was because when I caught the ball, I would be breaking my hands below my knees. So then when I broke my hands below my knees, my whole throwing mechanics were out of whack. So my front side is flying open. My arm is arcing at a angle that's not used to. And similar to Jimmy, it was my first day of pro ball. And, we're just taking ground balls and I'm throwing it. And a coach came up to me and said, "Hey, do you realize you do this?" And I didn't. So he said, "Why don't you try and he showed me, he's like, play catch with me." So I'm playing catch and I'm breaking my hands here. He's like, why don't you break your hands there when you feel the ground ball? And a light went off. I was like, holy cow. And then of course I got bitter at my college coach. I'm like, how come they didn't see that for the last 4 years? I've been making throwing errors, So when I started doing that, everything came in sync, and literally going back to, what Jeremy was saying and Conor was saying, about playing catch, that's all you're doing. You're making the play, and now you're getting into that slot. I call it your power slot. So when now you're throwing from a natural slot, and now you're making those good throws, and my throws became so much more consistent. And not only that, I had a lot more life on my ball wasn't dying. You know, my ball, I was throwing it through the first baseman. So that was a game changer for me when I figured out just something as simple. We all think like, oh, we got to catch the ball, we got to do this, we got to do that. It was something as simple as just getting my hands up to around my belly button or my chest. So everyone throws different. Some guys throw from here, some guys throw from their belt. But for me, it was between my belly button and my chest, and that's where my slot was. And for me, that was a game changer.
Thank you, Gaff. Appreciate it. I love it. It's really good content right there. Berkey, what do you got?
I think one of the things that kept me in the infield for as long as my talent allowed me to, which wasn't long into college, but was being on time with my feet and having rhythm. That was something that Jimmy stressed to me early when I first got to him, was having some rhythm with my feet and being able to flow through a ball. I'd get very like flat and stagnant and not be able to move through it well and be athletic through the baseball. So we were always talking about having rhythm, being a good dancer, like being Latin with our feet. So it was something that stuck with me early. And I was able to actually play the infield a little because of it, I think. And I always had an idea of timing, and Jimmy would always talk to me about relaying it to hitting, because I think that was something that just kind of clicked with me a little bit better than fielding, was hitting a baseball. So when I understood how to be on time with my feet, it allowed me to make the routine play much better, especially throwing errors. Everything kind of clicked a little bit when I was able to be on time with my feet. But then from a coaching standpoint, it's more related to gaff, is where you break your hands. So that clicked. I was talking to Joe Panic one day at just a clinic, and we were talking, and I was like, so what's the big thing you've learned from pro baseball compared to your college days? He was like, well, when I bring my hands to my chest, or when you funnel, he's like, I don't bring it to my belly button anymore. Because like that was a whole big thing when you were little, like bring it to your belly button. And he was like, I bring it right up to the center of my chest. And I was like, oh, what was the reasoning? The first thing he said, which I'll never forget, is it just looks better on TV. But then right after it, he said, when I break my hands, if I'm here, I have a better chance of my hand being on top of my feet. I'm in a shorter circle as opposed to being down by my belly button. I have a lot more room to work with my arm. So that was a coaching point that kind of stuck with me.
I love it. I love it. JP, what do you got to weigh in on this? What's something that you were mentioning a couple things to me the other day, so I don't want to steal your thunder. What do you got for us?
I mean, one of the things that made me a little better a defender was something very simple, stuff we learn in Little League that we don't really pay much attention to, which is knowing the situation. You know, knowing it's not really a mechanical thing, but it's just knowing who's running, speed of the runner, speed of the ball. We hear it a million times. You know, where's the runner? What am I gonna do if the ball's hit here? If the ball's chopped at home plate, I'm gonna go get it. Like little things like that. And Burke helped me a lot, man, because growing up, I was always attack. You know, I was one-handed, fielding everything one hand, and I always thought about dancing, you know, going to get the ball with the hop forward or going back or going to the side one-handed. But then when I got to Maine, I started slowing the game down. And same thing, even routine plays, I would always attack the ball and make throws on the run when I have so much time, you know, and then I'll make bad throws. My ball will sink. And when I got to Maine, one of the things we worked on with Burke is, yeah, you can attack the ball, find the good hop. That's what great fielders do. You know, they find the good hop, they get themselves in good positions to make the play, you know, get the ball, and then shut it down to gather yourself and make a good throw. You know, you don't need to get it on the run and throw it on the run. You know, that's when I realized that you could get the ball on the run and slow it down into a shuffle and make a good throw. And when I started slowing the game down, that's when I became a better defender.
No, and that's one thing I learned from Jimmy as well too. Back in the day, Jim, I'm sure you know it. Your Plus Defender logo that you had was a guy as you called it falling in. You know, going on the run and falling in to gather. And you said that type of play and kind of going to your right is is a game changer. It's something that, the elite really do. And that's something that I've seen firsthand for, my first year when I was here with you, Jeremy, that you did all the time, and you don't see it all that often. One thing that just to kind of piggyback off of some of the things that you guys said, Jimmy, you talk about playing low. One thing I see all the time with infielders is I see a lot of our guys have, their hips are up really high and they're not able to read the hop. And it's kind of just one of those glaring issues that kind of, you see right away. And with that, it makes it very difficult for them to really adjust and see the ball in, and, not feeling the ball out as in front as they really should be because of that. But one thing that, I've, started to really kind of dive into is the hip mobility aspect of that. Is that, some of the things that we're talking about with working low also relate to flexibility and mobility and relate to the athlete. And I know that kind of light bulb went off in my head. Burke, about like maybe a month or two ago, you and I were on the phone and we were talking over some biomechanical stuff. We were talking more on the hitting side of things, and you were recommending some books for me to kind of dive into. And, and looking into some of that stuff too, it kind of brings it all back together. But that's something for me, is just trying to stay low, keep the hips low, and work underneath from there with having your eyes, level with the baseball. But diving forward, next question.
Matt, can I jump back for a second? Because I think one of the things that, like, Jeremy's talking about is how we used one hand so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, while we just kind of went into situations where it was more appropriate for him to do it, I think that's one of the things that made him such a great defender,
mm-hmm.
is the fact that he used one hand so well, and the fact that he attacked the baseball. So I think, like, all infielders should, like, get good with one hand, because if you're good with one hand, you're golden. So I really do think that that's one of the things that just made Jeremy a great defender and makes him a great defender to the day, is the fact that he used one hand so well.
Absolutely. Jim, what's Wednesdays at Tech?
Sometimes it's one hand Wednesday.
One hand Wednesdays.
Yeah. I got to give you credit. I don't take credit for naming it. I tell you that. I think EJ in the room, one of our stud infielders, he would attest. I don't take credit for stuff I didn't come up with. So that's all you. And Burke. That's Burke.
All right. All of you guys I've learned a lot from, whether it be from a coaching standpoint, or Jeremy, just from working with you now, kind of bouncing ideas off of one another a whole lot. Even yesterday, you're talking about how you're taking, your pre-steps a little bit differently now. But, who are some people that you've kind of learned from, whether it be playing with them, playing underneath them, coaches that you've learned from, and what are some of the things that you've learned? What's one thing that you've learned kind of over the years that you think would be worth sharing with our audience right now? Jim, what do you got?
Well, I can tell you that you name every top infielder in the major leagues when I was, 14 to 24, I copied them. Those are the guys I really learned from. I would go to Yankee Stadium all the time, and we'd go early for batting practice, but I never watched the hitter. Maybe I should have. But I watched I would just stare at the infielder, stare at him. If I saw Omar Vizquel go through his legs, by the time 24 hours later, I had mastered what he did. I did everything he did the next day. If I watched Alomar, and the cool thing was I got to be in a game with those guys down the road in a big league spring training game. And, I have to replace Omar in the field. It was pretty surreal. And I asked if I could try on his glove, but, no, like that's who I learned from. All right. And I think if you look at, listen, a guy like Jeremy, you were a 6th round pick, right?
Third.
What do you say?
Third round?
Third.
Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry to sell you short. So you're you become a 3rd round pick out of the Northeast as a shortstop. Your dad was a major leaguer, right? You've seen baseball. You're around a baseball guy. You're around actions. I think Mike, Conor, all you guys, we see infielders look like robots around here. Nobody moves around. So when we played with the Latin guys in the minor leagues, and they would go, "Oh man, you got great hands," and they thought we were on that level, then that was the ultimate compliment. But I learned from watching them. That's why I was able to do that. So those guys really taught me the most about fielding, is just watching the guys who did it best.
Awesome. Gaff, what do you got?
I was actually lucky in high school. Our assistant coach, he just graduated University of Maryland. His name was John Coons. He was the starting shortstop at Maryland. So when I was in high school, he would actually take ground balls with us all the time. So, and he was, he started in the ACC for 4 years, really smooth. So, I remember taking ground balls with him and just watching him and saying, like, I want to look like him when I field ground balls. So that's where I learned, I was always a visual learner. Like if you taught me something by giving me these complex words and, I hear things like, hinging like joints to do stuff like that, that never worked for me. So I would have the visual of him just taking ground balls with me. But off of Jimmy's point, it's interesting. He said that I remember it was the late 90s. I was in high school or maybe just getting into college. And I went to, there was one summer, the Mets weren't like a World Series team or anything. And it must have been like mid to late 90s. I went to a lot of Met games because the tickets were cheap. We took the train there and we get there for BP, and Edgardo Alfonso would always take ground balls during batting practice. So when everyone's watching batting practice, I was just watching Edgardo Alfonso. And I remember he always had a Venezuelan bandana on, and he went to every position in the infield and looked so smooth at every position. And he was a guy, for some reason, I always tried to adapt my game to, and he could hit too. So I remember him being a pretty big impact when as a fielder, just watching him, and my eyes wouldn't leave him for all batting practice. Everyone's watching guys hit balls out, putting on a show, but I was watching him just going to every position too and looking really good. And then obviously once I got to college, we had pro ball guys who went to that school come back, Jimmy being one of them, and I would always just, stick with them. And I really think the more you're around it, the more you could get out of, and I know we're all in the Northeast, it's hard, but the more we could get out of the cage, and we're going to be better infielders. We got to get out. I don't have much grass around my house. It's more like concrete. We would go up and just throw ground balls at each other on the street or in the playground, and that's how we work at it, and just trying to be smooth. That's really what I always was into.
I think it's amazing that both of you guys are talking about defenders taking ground balls in batting practice, taking live reads, and I think it's important just to note real quick of how important those reps really are. That you can tell how serious a defender is by how he's taking his reps during BP, and those can be some of the best reps that you can really take, and it being as close to live reads in game as it can really be. Burke, what do you got to weigh in?
From a coaching standpoint, like Jimmy was a huge impact on me once I got to him in high school, and then before that, another guy who's from that same school and cloth. I'm not going to pretend to know how to pronounce PJ's last name, but I was at the Briarcliff camp when I was little, and he was playing shortstop for them at the time in junior college. And I saw him taking ground balls, and I was like, man, like that's what I want to look like. That guy right there. So that was a big thing in learning from Jimmy and PJ. And then believe it or not, like one of the people I've learned a lot from was Jeremy. Once he went to pro ball, like I couldn't wait to see him again and just pick his brain, which he'd probably get frustrated with me at. But I would, like, asking questions like, what's the biggest difference? What are they teaching you? Always trying to find what the cutting edge of, I guess, infield play is and what they're trying to get guys to get better with. So, you can learn a lot from watching guys and then talking to them, especially guys who are really, really good.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, you're around a whole lot of great players all the time. You're around big leaguers right now. What are some things that you've picked up and being with those guys every day?
Man, I say I've been fortunate that they've kind of taken me in and they've worked with me. Like some minor leaguers say that the big leaguers kind of push them away and don't really talk to them. But I've been lucky at most of these guys have taken me in during practice and they talk to me and they work with me. And last year, my first big league game that I covered in spring training, I'm in batting practice with Aledmys Diaz at shortstop. We're just catching ground balls, talking. And he comes up to me and says, hey, like, try to get your glove on the, like, low to the ground a little earlier. Don't really meet the ball there. Like, you're not doing it that close, but just do it a little bit earlier. Just try it. And then I started doing that, just messing around, like, working with it. And balls that would do a strange, like, give you a little bad hop, your glove is down there, and you could work from there. You're not smashed into the ball. And I worked on that for the whole year. The whole year I tried to get my glove earlier, and it was a big help. Just that little conversation, just being around the guys, just talking to people. Like I said before, Correa told me in practice, try to not make bad throws because careless throws in practice turn into errors in games. And but I was born with a big league father. You can't really find that everywhere. I'm grateful for that. He's taught me a lot. He's been around the game for a long time, and he's been my number one coach. He's always taught me the game. Even when we sit down and just watch the game, watch baseball. We watch a lot of baseball in my house. I'll tell you that much. And we don't just watch it for the home runs or for the nice plays. We try to find the little things. And he will always pause the game and ask me, like, what happened there? Like, why did he do that? Or why did he make that play? Or why did he miss it? And I'll try to answer it. And then we kind of pick each other's brains from there. And I say watching a lot of baseball, just keep watching the game. You learn so much from just watching other players. Pay attention to your teammates. Pay attention to the guys to do it the best. Go on YouTube. We have so many resources. Go on YouTube. You find any practice you want, any guy fielding ground balls. I love Jose Reyes. I love Omar Vizquel. I never got to watch Omar Vizquel live or kind of pay attention to his game when he was playing, but I go back on his videos and YouTube and just watch him do these trick plays, but he's practiced them a million times, and then I go to the game and I'm messing around trying to be like him, and just little things like that. I say those are things that kind of get you going in the right direction. Just copy from the best. Just copy from the stuff that have worked for them.
No, absolutely, and that's something I was fortunate enough to learn way back when. And Jim, you've known each other for a few years now, for sure. And when I first started talking to you, I thought I knew everything there was to know, and I knew absolutely nothing about anything. But one thing that you said to me back then was, I was under the thought process of the mistake of kind of teaching to the level. And everything that you guys just said right now was, if you want to be the best, you want to look at what some of the best do. And I think that's a really important message for the audience to hear, that it's similar in basically any other industry there really is out there. If you want to study science, you're going to look at what some of the best scientists do and what they've done, what their research has been. Same thing kind of goes for baseball, and that's something that I've really learned. I want to circle back right now to Jeremy, because you're a guy that takes reps and reps and reps and reps and reps. I know it. I got blisters on my hand for it, plenty of them. But there's a lot of thought processes out there that differ on one side or the other. And I want you to kind of elaborate a little bit further on that. What are you trying to accomplish when you take as many reps as you do? What's the meaning behind it? What are you trying to do?
I mean, that's your craft. You want to master your craft. The more you do it, the more you're going to get familiar with it. And like Jimmy said, the more you do it, the more you find the good hop, the easier it's going to be to do it next time. The more you do it, the more familiar you're going to be with the ground balls. Up the middle, you know what to do with that ground ball. Backhand, you know what to do with it now. And I always give myself situations. You know, a lot of people think I'm just taking reps on the field or doing dumb work or stupid work, but I'm not. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, you're just hurting yourself. But I'm not. You know, I'm trying to work on something. You know, I'm trying to master something. The more I do it, the more I could freestyle with my glove. You know, the more I work with my hand, the more I could improvise as I go. You know, that's the same with hitting. You know, you take reps, you learn your swing, and then once you're not going right, you know what to go back to. You know, you know yourself. You know what works for you, what doesn't. So that's what I do with my reps. I take reps. I learn what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and I kind of just go back to that whenever I'm not feeling right. I go back into my legs. I get lower, low to the ground. I'm a believer in that. So just little things like that. Sometimes when I get comfortable on the field, I tend to, when I feel good, I tend to stand up taller and just try to be cool with it. But when I'm not going good, I'm low to the ground and focused. You know, I have to kind of find the happy medium to where I'm repeating the same thing every time. You know, I'm doing the same routine over and over again. So, but yeah, I would just take reps to take reps. You know, I always try to work on something.
It definitely shows, man. It definitely shows. I mean, you know, you always said to me that, you know, the reps that you're taking when you're tired, those are the reps that you know, show up in game when you're under pressure, that you make that play, you know, in the 7th inning, you know, in a 1-1 ball game, or 9th inning in a 0-0 ball game, because you've done it 1,000 times over, you know, and thousands of times over. And, you know, your work ethic is truly admirable. And thank you again for coming on tonight. Kind of going forward, we'll circle back to you, Jim. What's one way that you train your infielders to compete? Kind of taking, you know, the footwork and mechanical stuff aside, you know, kind of training them to kind of get ready for games. Jim, you're on mute right now.
Sorry about that. Amateur hour over here. I know we spoke the other day about it where, you know, sometimes I'm guilty of flying by the seat of my pants in practice. You know, because I like to go over with the kids what I saw maybe the week before or the game before. Because I know as an infielder, if I had trouble going to my backhand, I wanted 50 balls to my backhand that next day. So I felt good about it moving forward. I wanted to get that out of my head that was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we try to outdo each other a little bit. We have a lot of talented guys, but just I try to give them every single play they're going to see. We don't just do the same thing over and over again. I like to mix it up every day because I like to keep it fresh and fun. So, I mean, I'm not the best at having that set thing where we're going to do this drill over and over and over again. I try to cater it to the guy at the time and what I see he needs. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a lot of times they make a play in a game and they think I'm going to come after him a little bit, but I enjoy talking through what happened because I feel infield is like playing quarterback. You don't just become a good quarterback in the NFL. It's timing, it's reading defenses, like reading the ball off the bat. There's just so much things that go into being good, and it's a process to being good. You know, and Jeremy spoke about having the timing, when to rush, when to know your base runner, when to slow it down. And, you know, I think our guys, that's what they learn the quickest. And that's how they get prepared for the game. They know when they need to be super fast, and they know when they can calm it down a little bit, get their feet underneath them. So I don't think I did a great job of answering your question, but that's kind of how I go about practice a little differently than some others maybe.
No, I mean, you're putting them in game-like situations to prepare them to compete. Now, Gaff, what do you got on that? What's one way that you prepare your infielders to compete in game?
So one thing that I really like to do, and it's something I liked when I was in college, we take our ground balls, we do what we have to do to field cleanly, but then I'll get the stopwatch on them, and I'll be behind their fielding position. So I'll tell them, hey, here's a 4-5 runner. Okay. So I'll hit the stopwatch when the ball hits the bat. And then it's really interesting to Jeremy's point that these guys come up rushing and they're like, and I'm like, okay, 3-8. But I told you the guy was a 4-5 runner. So why are you risking a bad throw here trying to, go a million miles an hour? And it gives them a really good instruction on look, the guy at the home plate is telling you the situation. He's telling you what you have to do if this ball hits you. So we switch it up, and it depends on our opponent. Okay, if we're facing an opponent that's a lot of speed, then I'll say, hey, 4-2, 4-1, to go that route. If it's a opponent that relies on the long ball, doesn't have as much team speed, we'll go 4-5, 4-6, somewhere in there. But I think that, and I used to probably drive my coaches crazy because I would have them come out and do that. Anytime I was taking any extra work, early work, I would want that just so I knew from my internal clock that was there. So the guys enjoy it. And then, like Jimmy said, you start getting a few guys out there, they start competing, you start going double plays off of it. There's a lot of things that you can do. So that's something that we always do leading up into a season or into a game.
Oh, that's awesome. There's nothing like a stopwatch to create some pressure and allow the guys to compete. Burke, what do you got to weigh in here?
So first thing, like when we're getting them to compete, I think it's just like creating a competitive environment that they can thrive in, right? And there's got to be freedom in that competitive environment. Like they have to be free to trash talk to each other, to just be themselves. So like know your guys. Like I encourage it personally. Like it's just something that I like, our guys competing against each other and talking a little trash, trying to get in each other's heads. And then whatever drill we're doing, like at the end of it, there would always be some sort of competition. And even if like I wasn't the one that created it, like they would create it off each other. If we're just doing like a 1-hop drill where we got to get a ball off 1 hop off varied hops, like they're just creating an environment where they can compete against each other. And then when we're getting them game ready, I think one of the big things is a stopwatch. Like Gaff said, I think one of the things that we like to do, or I've liked to do, is kind of create situations with the stopwatch. We'll say like, hey, guy at the plate's a red, guy at first is a green runner, and we'll mix up situations from there, hit the ball, not tell them where it's going, so the whole infield has to react based upon the speed of the runners. So we used to do this indoors at Maine a lot, like, Matt, like we would say, okay, runner at second is a yellow, plate green, first green, and hit a ball like in the 6-hole. And depending on speed of ball and speed of runners now, our guys would have to make a decision. And I think that was something that they enjoyed like tremendously, because you're giving them freedom to make a play. You're not telling them what to do to make a play. You can see their instinct, and they're a little more prepared for it now in a game situation. So I think that's a big thing when like we're trying to create like game-like environments, because the biggest separator between the game and practice is the speed.
Mm-hmm.
So by adding some element of speed, it gives them a good way to compete.
Love it. Love it. Pena, what do you got? What's one way that, you like to train that, helps prepare you for, maybe it might be a game or just, preparation for competition in general?
So I prepare for games during BP. I try to do a lot of, like we covered, a lot of live reads off the bat in BP. And if I could read a line drive off the bat from the jump, then I feel good for the game. I know I try to play the speed of the ball as well. If it's hit hard to me, then I just regroup, make a good throw to first. If it's hit soft, I go get it, make a good throw to first. But those are the things I do to get ready for games. Same thing, the live reads is the closest you're going to get to a game-like situation. So I take the pre-game work serious. So.
Awesome. Now, to kind of wrap this up, and then we'll kind of, for those that are on this, if you want to jump in on Q&A at the end, that's how we'll finish it. But to kind of wrap up, going around here, Jim, what's one thing that, you'd like to leave these guys with as far as, and we've covered a lot of different things tonight. What's one thing that you'd like to leave them with, or you'd like for your infielders to know?
I think from what the last conversation we had, when you run in those practices, I find as a coach, it's hard to almost hold their hand on every single rep, because I think the player of today, they need that instant gratification or the ability to take 25 ground balls and literally stay low and do everything properly, and to set your day off like that is very tough for the kids, I believe. They'll do something perfect for 5 reps, and then at 6th, 7th, they just you could see them start going off the deep end. And as a coach, sometimes if you said every time they do that, if you're hammering them every single time, there's that, what's the right time to just keep them serious all the time? I think a guy that's self-motivated, and all you kids in here listening, you got to get to work. You got to burn your brain a little bit. It should be, it's not all fun and games, right? You got to get to the office and punch the clock when you're taking those reps, like Jeremy's saying he's doing during BP. I was the same way in pro ball. I had a reputation for, it was a little crazy, but I dove for ground balls in batting practice. My uniform was done. And maybe I worked a little too hard with it, but that's just how it was. Everything was game speed, game action. And at the end of the day, I think all you guys can attest, I kind of really loved it too. So that's why I did it. So it didn't hurt that I love doing it. I still get a high from taking a ground ball, but just the focus. If you can focus and do things right, if you take 50 ground balls and you focus 30 of them, and then you start letting yourself have a little fun, that's fine. But you got to do the work for an extended period of time to get really good.
Awesome, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Gaff, what do you got? What's one thing that you'd like to leave these guys with?
For the younger guys, it really is just going out there and having fun and playing with your friends. And, every time we're in this point of our game where, there's so much instruction and everyone thinks that they need to go somewhere to be coached. But I guarantee you that everyone on this panel right now, the way we got better probably was just as much, if not more, when there wasn't a coach there. When we were out there with our friends, just throwing the ball as hard as we could at each other, throwing the ball. I remember I would go out into my street and my neighbors would hate me. It would be getting dark. I'd throw the ball as high as I could in the air. Okay. And try to find it. Okay. With all these cars around, so I'm a kid, but that's me having fun. That was me getting better. Or I'd be wearing out the side of my house or going up to the school and throwing it off the wall. Getting baseballs just ripped up from the concrete. My dad being mad that all the baseballs were ripped up. Like those things that you have to do in order to get better. And then you end up, finding when you start having fun, you're doing a little dance, you get some rhythm and timing to it. Like that's where you learn that stuff. When you're not being coached, you're out there having fun and learn things on your own. Now, just something that I always tell my guys in our program, you got to take care of the ball. All right. And, there's so many guys on our team that are interested in other sports, football, basketball, they're big fans. So the way I equate it is, when we make an error, it's like a turnover. All right. Now in any other sport, you make a turnover or you have a turnover and it gives the other team an opportunity to score. So when we make an error, we misplay a ball because errors are going to happen. It's a turnover. So now you're giving the team another chance to score. So basically taking care of the ball, doing everything you can. Don't be making some silly plays in the field. That when it comes to in-game stuff, that's what I would take away.
I love it. I love it. Burke, what do you got?
So I think it's all age dependent for what I'm going to say next, right? Because for you guys who are in high school, starting in middle school, college, the biggest thing I could say is somebody's always working harder than you, right? Like that is known. Like the best infielder that I've ever seen is in this panel, and he is the hardest worker that I've ever coached. It's not even a question. As far as I'm an early bird into the office, and a lot of times he'd be there before me. He'd have a tire chained to his back doing sprints on the field. There would just be something going on that he'd be there doing something, right? So he truly mastered his craft and didn't take reps off. There was no reps off, even in his own work. Like there was a focus, there was something to it. So older guys, like, have a purpose and work towards your purpose and know that there's somebody working harder than you. So if you want it, you got to keep working. Younger guys, the big thing I think Gaffney on the head, like have fun, like go out there, imitate somebody that you want to be, right? Like something that stuck with me was I had the pleasure of rooming with Tony Fernandez's son. And unfortunately, Tony passed away a little bit ago, but he was a like 8-time Gold Glover. And his son told me when we were taking ground balls one day, he goes, "Yo, I'm Derek Jeter in Game 7 World Series right now. Like, that's who I am." And he was doing that all the way in college. Like, he was always somebody else. And it was just a way for him to have fun. And I would say younger guys, like, imitate the greats.
That's really good stuff, Berkey. Really good stuff. Pena, now I know you still got the tire and you're strapping to your waist on Mondays and Fridays, but talk to us. Give us some sort of insight. Give us one thing to leave the audience with.
I mean, like Gaff said, you don't always need a coach there to get your work in. You don't always need people either. You don't need a teammate or a friend. You can do work on your own. What we used to do in my house, I had an older brother. I always competed with my older brother. He was always tough on me. He was always better than me. And we would play wall ball. We'll throw the balls off the wall and play runs. I hit it off the wall. You make an error. That's my run. We'll play 9 innings. And, we play games. We played a lot of games in the backyard. We had a scrappy backyard. You get bad hops. If you catch 10 ground balls in a row, you get signed. You catch 10 more, you get moved up to high A. You get 10 more, you go up to double A. If you miss one, you get sent down. That's how we worked, and we had fun with it. By the time you end the game, you've caught 200 ground balls, and you don't even realize it because you're having fun. And just stuff like that, man. Just go have fun with your friends and do it. And whenever you're by yourself, just put effort into the reps you're doing on your own. Just because no one's watching doesn't mean the reps don't count. They still count. Just keep doing your reps.
That's a great message. You absolutely got to have fun with it. And I've watched you have a lot of fun out there in the field. Even when you're taking, ground ball number 400 of the day, you're having a good time. But one thing that I'd like to try and leave you guys with is there's always something to learn from every person that you meet. And many of the things that I've come to learn are from these guys that are up here on this panel right now. And I was really excited to have you guys on because I love talking to you. And now we got you all together just talking baseball. So, thank you guys so much for coming on. There's always something to learn. You learn from everybody that you talk to. Take advantage of these types of opportunities. We're in a situation right now where, you could look at it and say, hey, I'm bedridden or I'm stuck to my house. I'm quarantined, and look at all the negative things that kind of come of it. But there's opportunities to get better. There's opportunities to get better with respect to social distancing in terms of, watching things like this, listening to things like this, going out in your backyard, like Jeremy was saying, and Gaff was saying, Burke was saying, Jimmy was saying, working on certain things, having fun, spending time with your families. And I really appreciate you guys spending time with us here tonight. I'd like to finish off. If you have any questions before we conclude, throw them in the chat. Anything regarding infield play or anything at all. The chat's here on the right. We'll read them out and we'll answer them before we go. But thank you guys for spending your night with us. I'll give you guys a minute or so to jump in there if you'd like.
I know some of the kids in this room, and a lot of them are the hardest workers in our organization, so it doesn't surprise me that they're here. So everybody's going to be afraid to put a question out.
Well, this was definitely.
I think.
Here we go. Any footwork drills? Who wants to take this one? Burke, you want to take this one on footwork drills?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, it comes down to what we do or what we did at Maine was we break things down so simplistic. We do our roll ball series. And my favorite was the Vizquel hop drill. I mean, I thought that was such a cool drill where we'd have a guy basically start on his right foot only if you're, a right-handed thrower. And they just time their feet up. So they do one hop on their right foot and timing up that left foot as they're coming down, fielding the ball. It was something that I saw Vizquel doing pregame. And I was like, but he was doing it with live baseball. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to see if we could do that. And our guys kind of took to that. They did it. And you'll see guys have a lot of trouble with that at first, like timing up that hop and making it look good. Mm-hmm. Like I remember Curbs his first time doing it. Jerry's laughing. And this guy is like I'm telling you, he was the best defensive second baseman on the East Coast. He could just flat out play defense. But man, when he first got in that Vizquel drill, trying to get his timing with his feet, that was a big thing. And then another one, like when you're done fielding the ball, is a good shuffle drill. Like stay compact, center mass, 3 shuffles, make your throw, follow your throw. That's always been a big one for me. So, there are tons. And if you guys have like questions on drills or whatever, like I'll shoot my email into the chat. Like feel free to email me and anything at all.
Absolutely. You're with those shuffle drills, you're gaining distance and direction toward your target. And that's something that you always talked about, Berkey, and then Jimmy, you too. We got a couple more here. Is it better to practice ground balls on concrete or grass? Jim, what do you got?
I think you should work off every single surface. I think half the problem nowadays is you guys are on turf all the time, and now you're going to get to a dirt infield. Mike knows we have turf at New York Tech. We go over to CW Post last year, and our guys are in culture shock because it's dirt. So I would play on every single surface you can. And in fact, I would go on the worst surface I can play on if I'm really working on my game. Why am I going to go get comfortable somewhere? What's the old saying, right? Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I hate the turf personally, but.
Jer, what do you got on that one? Ground balls on grass or concrete? Thank you, Jim.
I agree with Jimmy. You got to be able to make adjustments to any surface. Just different hops, different ways to read bounces, different ways to read hops. You're just training. Variables, and they're just different surfaces.
All right, awesome. How did you keep calm under pressure in game? Gaff, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I had a kind of weird way of looking at it. I would deflect any type of anxiety that I felt towards the opponent. So if I got up to the plate in a big spot, I would say to myself, well, this guy out here has to make a good pitch. It's not on me. It was just a weird like reverse psychology. And the way I couldn't tell you exactly how I learned that. I'm sure someone taught me along the way, but it was almost like, hey, I got nothing to lose here, and it's not that you don't care. It's just that I found that was my way of handling it, So I think you have to find your own, everyone has to find their own little avenue on how to deal with any type of stress or anxiety. But I think it's something that you do have to practice too. You have to be put in uncomfortable situations in practice in order to figure that out. So it's not something you just, could be, some guys might just be gifted with it, but it's something that you do have to work through and come to your own conclusions. Some certain things work for some people, other things work for others.
If I could add to that, Matt, I think I always tell people all the time that success comes before confidence, right? I can't just be confident. But I think I realized that we were all very nervous when we play this game. If you're not, you're lying to yourself. You feel those anxieties, you feel all that stuff. But I realized at a young age, no matter how I felt, I still made plays. And I could put myself in AAA World Series, 35 degrees. They put me in the 12th inning, and it's raining at third base. And I wasn't even on a team all year. And I am not feeling good out there, to say the least. I don't really want a ball hit to me. I am really nervous. I don't even know these guys. I just got to the team. Anyway, guy hits a 3-hopper down the line. I go over, catch it, turn, boom, throw a rocket across the diamond, and I'm coming off the field. What the hell did I just do? But why did I do that? Why did I make that play? Because I made that play my whole entire life, every day, all day, and rep after rep after rep. So I was prepared. If you know you're prepared, you can tell yourself, like Mike said, you could deflect in your mind. It doesn't matter. This is what I do. That's what I tell my guys. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what you're feeling, you're going to make the play, unless you're unprepared and you've never done it before.
Awesome. That's really good, Jim. This is a question for Coach Burke, it looks like. I miss you, Coach Burke, from Evan Gerby.
Hey.
Also, should we be copying MLB guys who are closer to our size, or does it not matter as much for infield as it does for hitting?
I mean, I would say it doesn't matter for hitting either, but for infield especially, man, like great infielders come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, you have Alex Rodriguez, who was 6'3", long and rangy. You had John McDonald, who was not. You know, he was more like a fire hydrant. But like, you want to watch one of the best shortstops defensively. The guy was unbelievable. Like Ozzie Smith was what, 5'9"? You know, Barry Larkin. Like, it goes on and on. So I don't think that there's a height requirement to play this game anywhere on the field. And the greats are the greats. Like, just go move like those guys. Go move like those guys. It doesn't matter how big or tall or short they are. Like, they could play, and they all have something in common. Like, Correa is super tall and long. But if you go watch some of the plays that, like, he makes up the middle, that, like, Ozzie used to make up the middle, and Ozzie was 5'9", 5'10". They're just, it doesn't matter height. Like, go model those great guys.
Awesome. Jim, you have anything to add to that? Because I know that's something that, you know, I've heard you speak to a bunch of times.
I totally agree with Conor, because whether it's fielding or hitting, I don't care if I'm 5'4", like I was in high school at the time. You copy A-Rod's swing, you're going to be all right. You copy Carlos Correa's swing, you're going to be good. And you know, I think that the bigger guys have a harder time fielding than guys like myself, being 5'9". So, you know, I think we should all copy the same people. There's no difference in body type at all.
That's awesome. Great question, Evan. With that, unless we got anything, doesn't look like we got anything else that's popped in there. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you guys for coming on here to speak tonight. And it was a lot of fun. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to upload this up to YouTube afterward. I'll send you guys the link. If you'd like contact information for any one of our panelists, if you have any follow-up questions for Jimmy or for Gaff, Burke, or Jeremy, you know, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you guys again for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matty.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Marsh.
Yes, sir. We'll see you guys all soon.
All right. Have a good night.
Yo.